Happy 2023, Augustonians. Welcome back to Lit Friday, and if you are new, we hope that you join us again and again. My name is Jessica Lene. I am the literary curator at the August Wilson African American Cultural Center and the host of Lit Friday. Lit Friday is a digital program that occurs on the final Friday of every month and features writers, creators, and thinkers from the African diaspora. Tonight, I am extremely honored to welcome Jacqueline Hamer Flakes, the fourth and youngest daughter of the late voting rights, civil rights, anti-poverty, anti-hunger, and I would argue human rights activist Fannie Alma Louise Dubois Townsend Hamer, better known as Fannie Lou Hamer. Mrs. Hamer Flakes is going to read from her memoir, Mama Fannie, growing up the daughter of civil rights icon Fannie Lou Hamer, and then we're going to talk about the lesser known activism of her mother, Fannie Lou Hamer. Next Lit Friday on February 24th, we will be talking to best-selling author Jonathan Escoffery about his latest book, If I Survive You. The New York Times describes Escoffery's novel as a gifted, sure-footed storytelling with a command of evocative language and perfectly chosen details. Welcome again, Mrs. Hamer. I'm going to share your bio with everybody now. Jacqueline Hamer Flakes is a 56-year-old single mother of two sons, Shadney, age 34, and Trenton, age 25. After realizing that racism was still very active in the Mississippi Delta, Jacqueline, also known as Cookie, decided to move to Grand Rapids, Michigan. After living there for 12 years, she felt that it was time to go back to the Delta in small steps. Cookie had so much on her heart that needed to be resolved that her mother, Ms. Fannie Lou Hamer, left unfinished. While starting her career as an iconic human rights activist, equal rights activist, and voting rights activist in 1964, Cookie was young and saw and remembered a lot of hatred that was done against her family and others in their city and other cities nearby. After being diagnosed with breast cancer, Cookie finished chemo. She had to do radiation treatment also. After her treatment was complete, Cookie returned home to have her sister, Lenora, die in her arms from a massive heart attack. May she rest. This was the slow move back home to Mississippi that went a little too fast. Cookie is an active advocate for breast cancer awareness, an honorary member of YAGA Youths Against Gang Activities. She has opened a nonprofit organization to start the Mama Fannie's Freedom Farm Co-op and Pig Farm that Mama Fannie Lou Hamer did not have a chance to complete due to dying from breast cancer. There are numerous events that Jacqueline Hamer Flakes has supported by attending, speaking, and or singing at. And she is on fire to keep the legacy of her mother alive. Thank you again for being with us.
Thank you.
Are you ready to read?
I am. I'm going to read Mama Fannie's early life.
Excellent.
Mama Fannie was the youngest of 20 children born to James and Luella Townsend on October 6, 1917. Had older siblings lived at birth, there actually would have been 24 children. The family lived in Montgomery County, Mississippi until 1919, when they moved to Sunflower County to work on the E.W. Brandon's plantation. The family of 22 lived in a 3-room sharecropper shack that lacked running water, electricity, and plumbing. Their work was very hard as a sharecropper, and the entire family was expected to help. Mama Fannie often, no matter how hard the family worked, they never came out ahead and broke even because of the faulty accounting under the sharecropper system, which created a perpetual cycle of debt for sharecroppers. Most of the time, they barely had enough food, which especially was during the winter months. As soon as a child could walk and carry a sack, he or she was sent to the field. Depending on the child's age, determined the size and type of cotton picker sack carried. Children's sacks were often made of burlap or something scrapped together from around the house. Adults carried the sacks as long as 9 feet. The sacks had a strap over the shoulder to free the hands to pick. When Mama Fannie was just 6 years old, she started helping her family in the field. Mr. Brandon had promised to buy her Cracker Jacks, sardines, and cheese if she could pick 30 pounds of cotton by the end of the week. As a young child, she did not see it as a trick to test if she was ready to go to the fields, but rather an opportunity to eat things she knew she had never had before. Once Mama Fannie showed she could pick 30 pounds of cotton, she was ordered to pick 60 pounds with no reward the next. By the age of 13, Mama Fannie said she was picking 200 to 300 pounds of cotton daily. Nothing was fair about the sharecropper agreement. Black sharecroppers were governed by the agreement that was written to make sure the plantation owner came out ahead in the expense of the sharecropper. Black families lived on farm property belonging to in exchange for a percentage of their crops. The white landowner also got the greater percentage because most blacks were illiterate and powerless. They were taken advantage of by shady sharecropper agreements, which often left them in debt regardless of how hard they worked. Most arrangements prohibited blacks from saving seeds from the to force them to take out credit to plant next year's crop. Mama Fannie often compared the sharecroppers' living and working conditions to what their former enslaved ancestors had experienced. Sharecroppers would work from sunup to sundown. It was nearly impossible and dangerous to move from one abusive landowner to another, especially if you owed a debt. If your new landowner hurt you, started out on him, and the cycle repeated itself. Because of their hard work and determination, the Townsend family became an exception and eventually pulled ahead. They would often collect the cotton scraps from the fields to sell. The extra money helped them get ahead and purchase things they needed without take out credit at the general store owned by the landowner. If their efforts to leave sharecropping behind, they saved enough money to purchase tools, wagons, farm equipment, and mules. Life was looking up for them until their farm animals were poisoned. They believed that Mr. Brandon and other white men in the area were responsible for killing off their livestock. Once word got out that they were planning to rent land on their own. This was Mama Fannie's parents, from which they never recovered. They moved from the Brandon plantation to the Marlowe plantation, but never recovered from those losses. Like the adults, the children of the sharecroppers were expected to work just as hard. Most children, especially during crop season, did not attend school, which was only open 4 months out of the year. They stayed home to work the fields so that few received an education. Black families could be put off the land for sending their kids to school during the crop season. Mama Fannie would often share how the landowner or those who worked for him would at times beat the kids of sharecroppers or sharecroppers whom they felt were not working hard. She said her mother carried a pistol in the event a sharecropper ever tried to whip one of her kids. As a sharecropper family, having children pick cotton was expected because the entire family was needed to work to get the work done. Despite how hard a family worked, they only received a small share of the crop. They were forced to buy food clothes, seeds, tools, and other necessities at the commissary owned by a landowner, often on credit, as the crop never yielded enough profit to pay cash. Sharecropping created a cycle of debt and poverty intended to keep Black people in debt and dependent upon the white landowner. Because Mama Fannie was needed to help pick cotton, she was not allowed to go to school very often. She could only attend school during the months the crops were not picked. Mama Fannie worked just as hard as the other family members, despite having polio, which made her cripple in one leg. Even as a kid, Mama Fannie questioned why Black people could not live as well as white people. Mama Fannie hated how Black people never seemed to have enough food or a nice place to live, despite how hard they worked, and vowed one day to change the situation for Black people. Mama Fannie was forced to quit school by the age of 12 to help her aging parents and never return. Despite not being allowed to go to school very often, read by reading the Bible when she could not attend school. Mama Fannie loved math, reading, and spelling when she was in school and was very good at them all because she was the youngest of 20 brothers and sisters. The care for her older parents fell on her when they needed it. Mama Fannie quit school to help out more around the house. In 1944, Mama Fannie and Papa married. His real name was Perry Hamer, but everyone called him Pap. We called him Papa. Mama Fannie was 27 when she married Papa, which was old considering most Black women were marrying in their teens. The reason Mama Fannie did not marry at an earlier age was probably that as the youngest of 20, the care of her elderly parents had fallen on her. Mama Fannie and Papa lived and worked on the Marlowe plantation. He drove a tractor and she was a time and record keeper for the plantation and worked as a domestic in the Marlowe home. Mama Fannie was one of the few Blacks on the plantation who could read and was good with math. So she was hired as a record keeper. Mama Fannie often recalled how she learned that scales were set to deliberately miscalculate the actual weight of the crops picked by sharecroppers, which allowed them to be cheated. Mama Fannie found a way to ensure the sharecroppers were not cheated out of the amount of cotton they had picked, but that was all she could do to help them. There were still other ways that were being used to cheat sharecroppers, which she had no control over. Mama Fannie and Papa lived on the Marlowe plantation along with other members of the Townsend and Perry family for 18 years after they married. They adopted my mother and Virgie while living on the Marlowe plantation. When my mother, Dorothy Jean, was old enough, she was required to work in the field like other sharecropper children, like what Mama Fannie was required to do when she was a child. My mother, Dorothy Jean, helped them chop cotton while Virgie, the younger of the two daughters, cared for Mama Ella, Mama Fannie's elderly mother. Mama Ella had to move in with Mama Fannie after becoming blind and was too old to take care of herself. Virgie was too young to cook, so Mama Fannie would prepare the meals for Virgie and feed Mama Ella. Unbeknownst to Mama Fannie, Virgie learned to cook by watching and spying on Mama Fannie. One day, Mama Fannie arrived from the field to a fully cooked meal prepared by Virgie. Both Mama Fannie and Papa were surprised by how the meal tasted. From that day on, Virgie helped prepare the meals, and she loved to cook. Despite how hard Mama Fannie and Papa worked, all the other sharecroppers they could never break even. And Mama Fannie would often talk about how they ended each year in debt with never enough food to eat, proper clothes to wear, or a decent house in which to live. Mama compared the substandard housing in which they lived to the home the Marlows lived. Mama Fannie was concerned about poor people, whether they were black or white. She had a saying that even I remember hearing her say, "The cry of hunger is the same from a white person as it is from a black." Mama.
So your book starts off with talking about how your mother, Fannie Lou Hamer, worked in sharecropping, probably clear through into the 50s almost. And I think that a lot of people don't know how long that system lasted. Why did you start telling her story there as opposed to starting her story where most people became acquainted with her as a civil rights activist?
I started there because it really showed the beautiful heart that she had, because she adopted my mother Dorothy Jean as when she was 8 months old.
Hmm.
No, she was. Let me see. Virgie was 6 months old, and my mother Dorothy Jean was 8 years old. Dorothy Jean 8 years old. Virgie 6 months old. She was 6 months younger than my mom Dorothy. And I just know that because she had had the hysterectomy back in the day and wasn't told that she was being given one, that was a really hard thing for Mama Fannie to go through, because it took her a long time to even tell Papa that what they had done to her, because there's no telling what my daddy would have done, my daddy Papa would have done if he had known that.
Do you remember his reaction or him ever talking about finding out about the illegal hysterectomy?
No, they never really talked about things like that in front of us. They tried to hide a lot of things because they wanted to keep us kind of covered from all of the wrongdoings that were being done back then.
And so there seems to be like a difference, right? Like there's a difference between how, because I remember this part from the book where you talk about her dress being borrowed. And so on the national and global stage, she's a civil rights activist, but at home, she's really taking care of her community, her children, you and your sisters, and your brother, and being a wife. And so how did she feel about the difference between how people responded to her on the national stage and then the parts of her life where she didn't get enough financial support for her efforts for being an activist, perhaps?
Let me clear something up. She never had a son.
Okay, just daughters, right.
Daddy Pap had one daughter.
Okay.
And I don't know if people are getting that confused with them having a son, but they didn't have a son. They didn't have kids together.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, I don't think she had a problem with not being able to raise as much money as they felt they needed to help the Mississippi Delta residents. Um, I think she was just grateful for what they received. And I mean, she was a Christian, and she felt blessed her with that was what she was supposed to bless others with also. So I know that she wouldn't have been disappointed or anything about receiving what she received, because they did receive a lot.
Right.
I mean, I remember is that they had um, the days that they had just 18-wheeler trucks just pulling up into our driveway when we moved into our new house. And I just don't understand we had 18 wheelers pulling up into a 4-car garage. And I mean, with that, I mean, there was boxes upon boxes of clothing. And I mean, that helped a lot of people in our communities. And I mean, I remember the peanut butter sandwiches that came in on a truck, and they were frozen. And I said from then on, after we finished giving out peanut butter sandwiches and we got done eating peanut butter sandwiches, I'm done with peanut butter and jelly. I'm done. But we had a lot of fun. I'll say those were my happiest times. Even compared to now, those were my happiest times.
Hmm. And you're also very like in the book, it's so beautiful how you can address like all the different levels of like fight your mother had in her. She had the wherewithal, the heart to fight for Black people on a national scale. She
Right.
had the wherewithal to fight for her family, right? Through adopting, and making sure she kept her family together through raising her children that way. She had the fight in her to support her local community and make sure they had proper nutrition and housing, like the 200 unit like housing program that she helped spearhead. And she's doing all of this while experiencing awful forms of racism. The house that her and Pap eventually bought getting bombed on the steps. Where do you think she found the energy and the joy and the drive to keep going through all of these layers of her life?
I know that there were times when she would run down to Aunt Laura's house, her sister who was close in age to her, and she would just sit there and just cry
Mhm.
and tell them that Mr. Marlowe and his people were after her. And she would just sit there and just cry because, you know, she knew she had done nothing wrong, never ever done anything wrong to him or his family, to be judged and to be treated the way that she had been treated and was being treated.
And that's interesting that um the family all seemed to be providing help for the activism, right? Your
Right.
mom providing, there are parts of the story when you were talking about your aunts coming by, your cousins coming by to help receive things, but also distribute things. But then
Right.
later on in life, when you mentioned that she fell ill and she was dealing with her breast cancer, there weren't that many people around. Why do you think that shift happened that way? Because it seems like everybody was very close and integrated together as a local community as well as a family. And then in her old age, it seemed like there was more isolation.
By the time she had died, um it's kind of hard to say this. You know how there can be jealousy?
Yes.
People can be jealous of you. I think it was a big part of jealousy that was going on. And I mean, because by the time she was at the point of, I'll say, death, she really would call out, Cookie, baby, come on in here with mama. I need you to, I'm cold. Mama's cold. I need you to keep me warm.
Mhm.
And just think to myself, those were the times when she really needed me and wanted to bond with me because she was gone all the time and I was her youngest child.
I remember that scene from that piece of the book as well, you spending extended time laying with her as she
Yeah.
was trying to feel good. What was your perspective as a child of the things that your family was going through because white members of your community were against her activism? How did you see that through your own eyes as a child?
Once again, they kept a lot of it from us, and we didn't get a chance to hear anybody say anything, not right against her. And that was one of the things that we didn't have to worry about because Daddy Pap was, I think he was 6'4" or 6'5", weighed almost 300 pounds. And he would have hurt somebody for his baby. That's what he used to call her baby. And he would his baby. And I just know that that's why he wasn't out there with her. And that was because, you know, that was her calling. It wasn't his calling. That was her calling at that time.
Mm-hmm. So how do you see everything that your family went through the eyes of an adult now that you know the details? What's your perspective on the kind of the rift around racism in the community that produced the violence that she was fearful of when she went to visit your aunt? How do you view it now through the eyes of an adult now that you know?
I'll say we had some some things going on in our neighborhood when we were growing up, and it's in the book also about two young boys got to fighting and one was killed on site. And one of the mothers who used to uh, um, Mama used to love socket to me cakes,
Mm-hmm.
and neighbor next door used to make them for her all the time. And her son was the one who shot the other young man.
Wow.
And I guess the mother thought that because um, she and Mama were good friends, I guess she thought that Mama wasn't as good of a friend to the lady across the street. But like Mama told her, you know, it doesn't matter who I'm friends with. Right is right and wrong is wrong. And she went to court, you know, and she testified about how the young man was. He I'm gonna say he was kind of horrific in our neighborhood. He stayed in trouble. He stayed picking on other kids, bullying kids. He stayed in the streets just talking smack to, you know, the other children. And, you know, it was just wrong. And Mama wasn't gonna just say that he was a good guy, because he wasn't. And that's how she was. She wasn't gonna say um it's like the Bible said, let your yes be yes and your no mean no.
Mm-hmm.
And Mama felt
And
about
she
things.
wasn't gonna tolerate any injustice, it seemed like. If it wasn't fair, she wasn't gonna tolerate it.
None whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. You
There was a
also talk quite a bit in your book about all of the different kind of organizations that she started. So there is the Pig Foundation, the Freedom Farm, the Housing Initiative, and you were a child while all of these things were happening. So what was like a day in your life running around with your mom when she was there helping with all of these things? What were some of the tasks she would give you, or how would you help out with these things when you were just younger?
because she loved to cook, and I loved to watch her cook, and to this day I love to cook also. Um I love to be around her, because anybody sitting around her when she was shelling peas or picking the greens or anything like that, you know, they had an opportunity to sit down and help, or she was going to tell them, look, get a bowl over there, and you know, you can help me out. You know, she wasn't going to go for well, no thank you, I don't know how to do it. She'll say, I'll teach you, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And going out into the gardens and all those things. I mean, I love doing that myself, because we were trained when Papa used to go out and plant the tomatoes and the beans and okra, and that's in our personal garden next to our house. And I mean, we used to go out, and he also had um, fruit trees and things like that he planted. And I mean, on any typical day, I would be out there sitting under the tree with me some salt and pepper. You know, I mean, under the tomato stalks, and eating tomatoes with me some salt and pepper. And I would go up under the fruit trees and eat plums and apples and peaches, and I mean, when it's time to pick up pecans so that we can have our pecan pies and all of those cakes and things like that, you know, it was awesome just being able to watch her and know what she was capable of, even though she was out there traveling and with the civil rights movement. You know, I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it.
And it seems like Ruleville, it's Ruleville, right?
Yeah.
So it seems like Ruleville, Mississippi is the site of several historic events, and not all of them are happy, right? In the area, and the book you mentioned that there were various violences in the area having to do with the lynching the lynching epidemic when it happened in the early kind of 20th century. You mentioned the death of Medgar Evers and how it deeply affected her because she worked directly with him through working with SNCC when they were in Mississippi. How, where do you think she stored that? Do you recall her grieving Medgar Evers or her response to it, or was she always kind of more focused on making sure you were given positivity and like light?
We were given more positivity than anything. She when we went to a gathering with his brother, and she got up to speak, and she she spoke to the family, and she let them know that she was sorry, you know, for his passing, and she started singing Precious Lord, Take My Hand. And I think I cried more than she did, you know, when I heard that song, because it was just um that deep spiritual part of her just flowed out. And I mean, it was something just hearing her sing that song on that particular day.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned her singing quite a bit. It's almost, it appears throughout the memoir. You mentioned her voice and her singing. Could you describe that for some of our younger viewers who may not have yet seen a video on YouTube of her singing or may not have yet experienced that for themselves?
Can I sing one of the songs?
Oh, I would be extremely honored.
Okay. Let's see. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. And while I'm on this tedious journey, I want you, Lord, to walk with me. That if you hear her sing that,
Yeah.
you'll be in tears.
Mm-hmm.
I sing it like she sings it, but it's my favorite song because it's what I loved to hear her sing. And just about everywhere that I go, I mean, I'll sing it because I mean, it brings out um that love and that protection, and just knowing that God is by our side at wherever we are, you know. And I don't want to cry. Um, just knowing that God is with us at all times. I'll say it like that. And
Mm-hmm.
she was truly a believer. And the only book that was in their home growing up was the Bible, because their dad was a preacher.
Mm-hmm.
Mama Ella was a choir director. All the kids were in the choir. And I mean, it was a beautiful thing just knowing a whole family is just impacts others' lives. You know, the other cousins and the other sister-in-laws and their children, and they used to just come around, and Mama would just tell them, if you don't have God, you don't have anything. If you are not being educated about God, then you don't have anything. And she would also say that knowledge is key.
Mm-hmm.
He told all of them, I want y'all to go to school. I didn't have a chance to go to school. Me and my brothers and sisters couldn't go to school. Your mama and daddy probably didn't get a chance to go as much as they would like, but we had a chance to help each other out, learning how to do some things. And while growing up, I always heard that from my cousins and my uncles and my aunt, that they really needed to be on track with getting their education.
Education is everything as well. In my family, education is everything.
Yeah.
I feel that. And so at the beginning of the book as well, I'm going to show the book again so everybody can see it. Get it on Amazon. Make sure you take a good read. What in the beginning you say that people are always mislisting or misrepresenting the family structure that you had by saying she only had 2 daughters, getting the number of children wrong, or how people will write about her without necessarily taking an interest in her everyday life outside of her activism. And I wanted to know what your ideas were for why that is.
I'm not sure if they really understood how everything worked in that aspect. They knew that she had Dorothy and Virgery, but what they were unaware of was that when Dorothy Jean passed away, my dad was getting ready to go to the military, and they wanted my sister, but they wouldn't be able to take care of me because I was sick all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So my dad talked with his family, and they told him just give her permission to raise me and my sister, adopt us and raise us as their own. And that's what he did, because Mama Fannie and Daddy Pat, they already loved us. We were already around them all the time. We were their so-called grandbabies, for a few months until Mama Dorothy passed away. And when he gave her permission to adopt us, then we became her babies. We became her babies.
And you have the date written in the book as well. What was the year? 1964? That you have the date written in the book. I'm so sorry I didn't mark it, but I want the date that you were officially adopted. I have so much of the book highlighted that I can't find it now.
I do too.
But it struck me, it being there, the mentioning of the date made everything so much more strong, because here we go. This is the part. Do you mind if I read it?
No, go ahead.
So it says here, when we got older and could understand, we were told that our father did not live with us after our mother's death because the responsibilities of caring for 2 young babies were too much for him. After my mother died, my father decided to go into the military. He planned to give my sister to his family to raise and give me to Mama Fannie and Papa. Mama Fannie persuaded him that splitting us up would not be what our mother would want, and asked my father to allow her to adopt my sister and me. My father agreed, and on May 2nd, 1969, my sister and I became the daughters of Fannie Lou and Perry Pat Hamer.
Okay, because you threw me off with 1964.
Right, I'm sorry, excuse me. But I think that that's like such a, because I feel that there is a lot of affection. I felt a lot of affection in the book towards this chosen family, right? Like
Yeah.
related, but there's a different strong sense of connection when you are chosen by your mother, or you come into the arms of your mother and she accepts you and goes, you are mine in my
Right.
life. Did you ever speak with her about the interfamilial adoption, what that meant to her? Or when you got older and you were both kind of women, did you have an opportunity to talk about being mothers, thinking about life?
No, because I was only 9 years old when she passed away.
And she never
So
discussed the adoption with you directly.
no, no. She would say some things about my dad and how they told him he would never have to worry about being able to see us. He only lived 3 blocks away. His mother lived 2 blocks away. So all of their family had access to us whenever, and she was happy to let them come by and see us anytime. He would come and take us riding and go and see his family, in other little parts of Mississippi. And I mean, that was a good thing for him. He had another family. He got married again after he got out of the military.
Mhm.
um, and he had 2 daughters by her. And I mean, they could come over here. They were never treated any other way than the way me and my sister Nook were treated.
Mhm.
Yeah, Mama loved kids. She did. She loved kids.
What what is a part of your mother's personality that you think no one else has ever seen but is very special to you?
Um, I used to love to hear her whistle.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she used to love to whistle. And I asked her one day, Mama, can you teach me how to whistle, because you can sing really good, and then you whistle really good. I'm like, can you just teach me? And she said, "Nah, baby, that ain't ladylike." And I'm thinking to myself, well, are you a lady? I mean, you're doing it. You're whistling. But yeah, I used to love her. A lot of people don't know that
Did
because
you
she didn't
ever
do it.
learn?
Huh?
Did you ever learn?
No, no. I've tried and I can't get it. I cannot get it.
So, in your everyday life in Ruleville, do you continue to see evidence of her legacy in your home, in your hometown to this day?
I see it in the homes that she helped people to get.
Mhm.
They had money to pay for their lots, because that's what they actually needed to get their homes built, was to have the money for the lot. And
Mhm.
the lot was $100 and something. And that's a really low price, compared to these days.
Exactly.
But I was interviewing a neighbor one day, and I was asking him, how did you come about getting your home? And he said my wife came home. She was working at the Head Start, which Miss Hamer helped her get that job at the Head Start cooking. He said she came home and she said, "W, Miss Hamer said, folks getting houses. You want to talk about, trying to get us a house? They were living on a plantation at that time, and he was working hard and having a hard time feeding his family. So he said, "How much is it gonna be?" And she said, "100." She told him the amount, $100 and some. And he kind of cursed a little bit and said, "No, that's a whole month pay." And
Yeah,
he said, afterwards, he was telling her, that was a good deal. That was a good deal, and that was so nice of her to help us, because they didn't even have all of the money, to pay the whole amount. And she helped them. She helped them get it. The part that they didn't have, she paid it for them. And then the next door neighbor beside him, she also worked at the Head Start in the kitchen cooking. And I said, well, Miss Geraldine, how did it come about? You know, what did she say? And she said she walked in the kitchen, and we were looking up wondering what she doing here, because she had never been over there, you know, to the Head Start in the kitchen area. And she said, who want a house? And so everybody started raising their hand. Everybody started raising their hand and just saying, I want a house. And I said, oh Lord, it was an Oprah moment. Had to be an Oprah moment. And everybody, everybody who wanted a home, she helped them get it. Whether or not it was her taking part of the money that she had from Freedom Farm, paying that back. She used part of it to help those people make their payments to get their lot. And walking around Louisville, you can just see the difference in those houses that were built back then and the houses that are up now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You are also an activist. You continue your mother's work. You're a breast cancer advocate. You're an anti-racism activist, as well as anti-poverty and anti-hunger. What are some of the major differences between activism in your mother's time and what you see in activism today?
Activism in her time seems like to me that they were going around and helping people to register to vote, and those who didn't know how to vote, they would actually take them to classes and help them. I mean, they had young people who instructed them on what they needed to do and how they needed to do it, and even taught them even more um, um, as readers. And this day, it's just kind of hard for you to help anybody, because it's like they don't want the help. They don't want the help. And even with um, trying to help them with having food and clothing, you know, it's like they don't appreciate what you're doing for them. And I just feel like trying to start up another Freedom Farm co-op, but it's going to be called Mama Fannie's Freedom Farm Co-op.
Mm-hmm.
And I want the pig farm, and also I'm going to open up Mama Fannie Scholarship Fund, because she never carried through with anything like that. She would just tell people, you know, family members mostly, but I mean those who she met at universities, you know, she would just tell them, you know, get your education and don't leave your hometowns, don't leave your city, because whatever you're experiencing in your hometown, you're going to experience it wherever you go. It
Mm-hmm.
may not be as good, it may not be as bad, but at least pay something back, pay it back, pay it forward.
Support your community. Support your community on the ground by living there and setting an example.
Yes.
What would you say is new to you about how activism is today? Like, I think one of the main examples is like Black Lives Matter. Is there anything new about activism today that surprises you or interests you, or anything that you've learned about activism during your lifetime that's kind of different from the way she did things in her activism?
Um, I'll say that with Mama seeing so many people beaten and hung, and no, you know, finding out about people being hung, and even with relatives who would walk into a store and walk out and be kicked in the buttocks, you know, by a white man, and they would go out and they would picket, you know, because of that. Um, people really, especially here in the Delta, Mississippi Delta, they don't do that. They're not. I mean, if anything is going wrong with anything or anybody here in the Mississippi Delta, they're not going to pick up a piece of paper. They're not going to write anything out about what's going on or what happened. You're going to see it in the news if anybody reports it, but that's just a minor part to me of how things are going these days. I mean,
why do you think there's such a difference now as compared to then? Why do you think there's such a difference?
I'm not going to say people don't care, because I know they care, but I'm going to say we can't get to the root of it like they did back in the day. It's hard. It's hard to even, I don't even know how to say this, but it's just hard to put in words how people say Black Lives Matter, when to me all lives matter. You know, we think about the situation in St. Louis, and I mean, I was living in St. Louis at that time, and the police told us stay inside, don't even come out. And I mean, I wanted to go out there and just be a part of it, you know, and make sure that um, the young man's family was okay, and that, you know, there wasn't a lot of the burning down of the stores and all those things, but all those things did happen. And it's sad to say, but they messed up what could have been longevity for that area of St. Louis. And, you know, it's just sad that it happened like that. It's sad that it happened like that.
Hmm. I wanted to ask about your mom's like life as a woman, right?
Mhm.
And I wondered how you feel her womanhood informed her activism and the decisions that she made in her life. Because, you know, there are a lot of conversations nowadays about how women are still, in some respects, although we have more opportunity than we had before, that we're still suffering from the same issues of oppression as women. And so I wonder if your mother's perspective as a woman informed the activism that she decided to do in her life.
I know it's a great part of it, because she felt bad for the mothers who weren't able to get out and work and help the family, you know, get the things that they needed. And there was a factory, a sewing factory actually, that they put up in Doddsville, Mississippi.
Wow.
And she went to the owners of the land and explained to them what she wanted to do. And they said, well, do they know how to sew? And she said, probably not, since they don't have the money, you know, to buy sewing machines. And they said, well, they're going to have to know how to sew first of all. And she raised money, and they purchased sewing machines, and they had a class where those women could come out and take those sewing lessons. And not only that, the Fannie Lou Hamer Daycare, where she partnered with um, um, Miss Dorothy Heights, and they got the Fannie Lou Hamer Daycare. And I mean, they were able to bring the babies to the daycare center in order for the mothers to get jobs and be able to have money to take care of home. Also, single moms, it didn't matter. She wanted to make sure that she could help them in any way that she could, because she didn't want it to look like she wasn't trying to do anything for the citizens of the Mississippi Delta. And I mean, she had friends that she shared things with, and I mean, she would meet with them. And one of well, her mentor, she was Harry Belafonte's mentor.
Mm.
So for her to have um, a closeness with him and his wife and their children, you know, it was easy for her to bond with Miss Julie. And she had Miss Rose. You can see in the back of the book where the letters are.
Mm-hmm.
Where he went to Miss Rose, you know, and as Mrs. Rose's Miss Rose was her confidant, and she could go to her and talk to her about anything. And I mean, Miss Rose would go to her friends and anything that was needed here in the Mississippi Delta. Just like one time, the state wanted to shut down the Head Start program. And Mama wrote to Miss Rose and told her, Rose, I feel so bad. We have 121 babies in this Head Start program, and we've got to get some money to help us out until we can get everything straight, because they can't they can't just shut us down right now.
Mm-hmm.
These babies need to be in school.
So it seems like a lot. Your mother understood the importance of the material. She understood that everybody has to eat, everybody has to have a roof over their head. People need childcare and people need skills. And I
Right.
think that for me, being of the generation I am as a millennial and looking at activism, I feel like I receive more ideas about liberation and ideas about anti-racism. I received those ideas, but the community programs within the community that provide food, shelter, childcare, and skill training, those are perhaps not as available as they once were during your mom's time at activism, providing material support to the community so that way people could continue to develop and grow and live their lives with dignity, perhaps.
Mm.
So my last question is, what do you think your mother would say about the world today? If she could come and see Ruleville now, or see how things are just in the present, what do you think she would say?
I don't know what she would say, because I know she would be terribly disappointed.
Hmm.
Um, I know that she would, one thing, be excited about. We have more people in the White House in those seated positions. We have more blacks now than we've ever had. I don't know if you guys have ever read the book, The Senator and the Sharecropper. And it was about Mama against Senator Eastland, and
Mm-hmm.
never got along because she always told it like it was. And she didn't like him and he didn't like her. But I mean, I would never say that he had anything to do with any of the things that happened, you know, while she was in activism. Um, I know that both of them would exchange words, you know, like on an interview or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that they've ever um, had an exchange of words any other way. And I know that she would be happy some kind of way when it comes to more children in school, more black children in college, you know, more standing up for the rights of others. Um, in a way, we are doing better with that. because we didn't have a chance to do that back in her day.
Mm.
Um, being beaten on, or the water, spraying the water on us to the point that we fall out because of the pressure of the water. I remember some of those days, when I would see it on television, and I wouldn't ask that on anybody. And just knowing that the things that she went through in Winona, Mississippi, was not an easy thing for her to go through. And I just say that it would be hard for her to even say anything about it, because she was the type of person who really didn't like going into messages like that,
Mm-hmm.
unless she was in a crowd of people and just telling them, what was going on in the Mississippi Delta. And I mean, we were in Winona last year, and it was horrifying to hear that the people in Winona were not aware of the beating that happened then.
Mm.
And I mean, I have a friend who lives there who worked at the police department, and they knew nothing about the beatings.
Wow.
And I read some of the FBI files, and it was sad how everything was hidden. It was sad how it was hidden. And I don't understand why they did it like that. But I mean, they didn't allow anybody to have access to not even that not only that information, but the deputies, the policemen, the uh aldermen, everybody who had a part in it, they did not allow them to even open doors for the FBI to come in and investigate.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm. Well, I have to thank you for your generosity and your patience.
Yes, ma'am.
I loved reading this, and I want more people to read it, and I want more people to buy it, and I want more people to learn about the life that you experienced with your mother, and learn more about her local activism, because that is so incredibly important. And thank you for sharing your beautiful voice with us and providing us with song. It was such an honor to hear you and experience your joy of connecting with your mother through singing the song that she sang that is so important to you. And you're just so appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Remember, everybody, February 24th, Jonathan Escoffery is going to be with us at 6 p.m. And in the meantime, be well and take care of yourself. Bye.
Bye, Jessica.